Hello again, friends, and welcome back to me self-reflecting on my creative process. I briefly covered the origins of my main story in my last video, and today I'll be looking at the most recent developments I've made to it just this year. As I mentioned then, this story has been around for a long time, so, as you can imagine, a lot of things have changed, and sometimes ideas turn up that force themselves into your story. Dr. Kelly Amery is the most recent example of this, even though it was only a couple months ago. I can't quite remember how exactly she came into existence, but her first appearance is these comic pages, which basically explore the idea of one of my main characters, Eddie Riverdale, catching up with an old family friend, Kelly, who he hasn't seen since he was a kid, who had been his older sister's best friend for her childhood and teenage years. There's only so much you can add to characters you've already spent so much time with, so there's something so much fun about developing a new character because you have so much freedom to explore. You have some healthy limitations of needing to fit them into the pre-existing story, but otherwise, you can do whatever you want. Suddenly, Kelly was a Buffy fan and avid Spuffy shipper, an ex-surf lifesaver, an emotionally drained cardiothoracic surgeon who regrets all the years she spent at uni and isn't even sure she likes her job. That nostalgic 2000s pop vibe from Kelly Clarkson songs like My Life Would Suck Without You. I'm a sucker for ships, and despite the fact that Eddie already has too many love interests, I was interested in exploring what a relationship between them would look like. At this point, Eddie is 22 and Kelly is 34, but they're actually in similar life stages. They're both parents, they're both still beginning to figure out what they're really passionate about. I like looking at themes and how they affect characters, so I wanted to use this opportunity to look at the theme of age gaps in relationships, with the added awkward factor that they previously knew each other. What if Eddie and Kelly meeting each other again after 17 or so years, realize they now liked each other? Would it work out? What insecurities would that bring up? How would others judge them? There were reasons for Eddie and Kelly to be drawn together. It was more than just attraction, or they had a similar sense of humor, or that they were both single parents recently out of serious relationships. There was something innate, something meaningful and touching and indescribable. And sure, this isn't the first time I've thought that about one of my ships. It's probably a fairly regular occurrence. But the more I thought about it, and the more comic pages I drew, the more invested I was into making Kelly and Edmund endgame, making this the ship that got the happy ending. It had given me a key to exploring his childhood, to getting to know his family, his friends more deeply, through their reactions to this relationship, like in this Christmas time scene where he's introducing Kelly to his siblings and they're all somewhat surprisingly cool with it, even if, as in Rosenhahn's case, it's because of the prestige of her job. Lyra is almost always disappointed in Eddie's decisions, but she's too preoccupied to care now, and Camille just tends to be easygoing about everything. It's his older sister May, who, as you may recall, was once best friends with Kelly, who's really averse to the idea, which Eddie and Kelly themselves predicted, and in fact she gets really insulting about it. But then you learn it's because of the motherly, nurturing role she's occupied to fill the neglectful void from their real parents that made her very protective of Eddie, especially because he's so self-destructive. Eddie and Kelly were so sweet together. I wanted things to work out for them. They were going to get married, start a family, spend the rest of their lives together. But I couldn't because Madeline and Eddie had been the OTP since almost the beginning, and I'd already interfered with it enough times. I'd already retconned one of Madeline's kids to be Kelly's kid instead. I had made a terrible mistake. I thought it would all be a harmless creative exercise, but everything was falling apart and someone was going to have to be sacrificed. And I hated hurting a character I just created and who I'd loved and who had inspired my favorite version of Eddie, wholesome dad Eddie, mature and understanding but still fun Eddie, because now it meant going back to depressed Eddie and losing a character I loved, lots of characters I loved, because now I could explore the impact of grief and Eddie raising a defiant teenage stepson by himself, but it was at a horrible cost. And I only had myself to blame for going too far and trying to stray back, trying to put the pieces back together and have some semblance of my original story, but I still ordered Kelly and she deserved better. But I betrayed her because I couldn't betray my original story more than I already had. So, this is an apology to Kelly, and I promise to make you as important as I can with the slice of the story that you live in, to make you as happy as I can, but I'm sorry for making you too happy, too caring, that all your insecurities meant we had to lose you. I'm sorry I didn't do you justice. I want to say that I'll learn for next time, but I love inventing challenges for myself too much. I love novelty too much. I love creating something new too much. I love building towers only to realize they can't stand and watching them crumble, and I'll just have to face the consequences again next time. So, I suppose this video has become less of an update and more of a warning to be careful when you're messing around with your story and creating new characters. It's more dangerous than you might think. And so, thank you for watching this edition of Lillian Slowly Loses Her Mind, working on a story constantly, and follow me on Insta and Quora, and remember that linear regression is the secret to time travel. I will see you next time.